Good morning. Welcome to the Communities and Environment Overview and Scrutiny panel. A bit of housekeeping, then a little bit of an intro, and then we'll get into the agenda, which everybody will have hopefully looked at and got an idea of what our main purpose is today. So a fire alarm, no practice expected. If it sounds, can all present leave the building quickly as possible by the nearest exit. Designated assembly point is in the public square, in front of Cast and beyond the fountain, away from the civic office. If there's anybody with mobility issues, please wait in the refuge area at the top of the stairs where the emergency activation lift is located, and the use of the intercom situated to the left-hand side of the lift doors to call for assistance. No call will be undertaken. Thank you. The obvious point of mobile phones, please ensure they're off in silent, but a slight anomaly for me, I have to keep mine handy for sugar alarms. So if it goes off, I don't need to take action at the time, but it may go off on that. Okay? Filming of the meeting. This meeting will be audio visually recorded and will be available to view on the Council's website and YouTube channel at a later date. Can I ask all those present to use their microphones to ensure that the audio is captured? If there are any public in attendance, which there aren't, so I shall go by that. Introductions, not big ones, but we know how meetings and panels work. Somebody watching this might be doing it for the first time and just see us as a whole group of people. So really, if I could request just a one-liner from everybody and what they're seeking to get out of there. And I'll start with Kelly, please.
Apologies have been received from Councillor Gemma Cobby and Alexander Jones.
Okay, we're now going to consider the extent, if any, to which the public and press are to be excluded. There are none present. Declarations of interest, if any. Could you please just jump in with any declarations of interest? No. Public statements I don't need to go through because nobody is in attendance behind us. So there's no public in attendance. So we'll continue. So just to confirm in, the officers expected are in attendance, which is Lee and Kelly. If Kelly just wants to give just a few words of what she sees your role here today and what you want to get out of the consultation.
So Kelly Hopkins, I'm the Service Director for Environment. Thank you. So Lee's team, the waste team, sits within my environment area of council business. So there are some significant changes that are coming in that the government, successive governments actually, have been working on for a number of years to improve recycling rates, to improve reuse rates, and to minimise the amount of waste that goes to be either burnt or goes to landfill. We don't send an awful lot of waste to landfill. Most of our waste, residual waste as it's called, the stuff that goes in your grey bin, goes up to Ferrybridge to the energy from waste plant there. So there are some significant changes that are coming in. The government has mandated a whole host of changes, and you'll see if you're out and about around the country. The biggest change that's coming in at the moment nationally is the introduction of the curbside food waste collection, which in South Yorkshire we are exempt from at the moment because all of our organics waste is actually reprocessed over at Manvers with our joint waste facility over there. So we have a dispensation until 2040. So in terms of that huge change to the waste service, which is happening in most local authorities nationally, that won't be happening here. However, other changes that will be coming about are the government has mandated a separate stream to collect your cardboard and paper, because again, that's prime for recycling, and we need to get as much of that out of the residual stream as possible. Again, that can be reused, it doesn't need to be burned. Similarly, and just to kind of give you some a bit more background, the government, and I think we've been here before to tell members about this, the government will shortly be introducing a deposit return scheme. So that means you'll start getting your money back on your plastic bottles or certain plastic bottles and tin cans. There'll be a levy on purchases of things like drinks, cans and bottles, and then people will be able to take them back and get the 10, 20 pence back like the good old days when we all used to earn our pocket money that way. So we've got that coming in as well. We also have as well, which is of quite significant concern, is that the government is in the past. I'll rewind a bit. In the past, you'll have heard of things like carbon taxes. So if you polluted and you created carbon, you got the government charged you for that. You got a levy for it. Historically, energy from waste plants, municipal energy from waste plants, were exempt from that. So we've never had to pay that carbon charge, if you like. I'm not using the right technical term, but I think we all understand what that is. However, that's going to be introduced from 28. Is it, Lee? Or is it 27? 2028. So from 2028, for every tonne of materials we send to Ferrybridge to be incinerated, we're going to get charged for. So it's really, really important that we get all of our residents to recycle as much of our waste as we possibly can, because anything that's burnt, the council is going to have to pay for, in addition to the gate fee that we already pay, obviously, to dispose of our waste. So there's a real imperative to get residents to recycle as much as possible, to dispose of the waste responsibly, because as you know, in your own wards, that can be a challenge. Even just getting some residents to put things in the bin can be a big ask in certain areas. So that we reuse, we recycle, and we minimise what we're incinerating. So all of this is going to, and the stuff that we're talking about and you've asked questions about, is basically going to contribute to those end goals. So there will be some changes to the waste service that are coming in over the next year or two. Repeating myself, not as fundamental as this additional collection for food waste, and we'll see how that pans out nationally. I know if you've got friends, relatives in other parts of the country, it's not necessarily being welcomed with open arms in lots of communities, even though I think people know it's the right thing to do. It's a bit of a messy job disposing of food waste, some would say, but obviously very worthwhile. So I think that's the general overview to where we are, so we can get right in the detail. And Lee is our technical expert in waste, so she's best placed to kind of answer any questions that you've got, and I'll chip in as I need to. If that's okay with you, Chair?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to add that you made available to me two very interesting videos on Manvers and Ferrybridge. So while not a great deal we can do over those, if you get a chance to get it, have a watch of it. Very interesting. We
can send those round. We'll send those round with the minutes via Caroline.
Councillor Russ Linley, Councillor for Hexthorpe and Bowlby North. I'm interested to understand the mechanism of the planning and execution of what you're proposing today. So that would be good for me. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Councillor Lee Sammett. To be honest with you, it's exactly the same as my my colleague here. We've got really nothing else to add to that. Thank you.
Councillor William Whitey for Thornham Morans. The stuff that we send to get incinerated, they make energy out of that. Do we get paid for stuff we send them?
Just, if I may, Chair, when everybody's gas bills and electricity bills went through the roof a couple of years ago, because it was producing electricity, we did get a rebate because the price of the energy had gone right up. So we kind of got a bit of a profit share, Doncaster, Rotherham and Barnsley. So we have had some money back. We have had a rebate. Again, off the top of my head, I can't remember. Was it about 1.5 million? So over a couple of years. So we have had some back, but ordinarily we pay to dispose of our residual waste there.
To council, then it don't get shared out between people that are paying bills.
Came back into the council coffers, councillor.
Hello, I'm Nick Allen. I'm one of the councillors for Bessica Ward. I was interested in what you said about the deposit return scheme, and I know it's been worked on and talked about really for a very long time, but I'd be very interested if you could provide any further information about that and what stage they're at. My understanding it was going to be piloted, but I know the government's been speaking about picking authorities or local authorities for some time for a particular pilot scheme, although whether details are worked out and that sort of thing. Thank you.
I'll jump in last. Councillor Yonamal Krachun for Bowlby South. I suppose what I'd like to get out of this one is to see the viability of it, especially in very crowded residential areas like Bowlby and so on, and how that's going to function, especially considering we have a lot of waste that is contaminated and it's being dealt with more or less effectively. So I'd like to see how that's going to play a part in this whole new process. Thank you.
Do you want to say a word? No? Okay. And finally myself, for anybody watching, I'm the chair. My job to make sure that we keep to a set of protocols. It can be quite difficult. If any of you are old enough to remember the famous actress Joan Collins, her sixth husband made a famous quote that knowing what's required of him, he knows. Making it interesting is sometimes difficult. So my job is to try and keep it going with protocols known. Caroline will jump in with anything else, and if she has too much of a speaking part, then I'm seeing afterwards. So we're going to get on to the questions. Is that okay? Right. So when it comes to other people's questions, if I could just request in it, keep things flowing, that when your question has been answered, please state any supplementaries, or please quote no supplementaries, and anybody else that wants a supplementary that hasn't asked the question will indicate to me and I'll bring them in. Is that okay? So start on the questions. First one from myself. The para reference is just basically where it sits in the agenda. We're not going to go through every single paragraph, but that just helps Caroline to have set the questions for you in some logical order. So the first one from me, 3,413 responses to your survey that went out in the form of 8 questions. Do you consider 3413 a success, or would you do anything different next time?
Thank you, Chair. We actually deemed the response rate a success. We have run previous consultations which have actually received more responses. At that time, we were already doing some promotions around plastic pot stubs and trays, which we think actually accelerated that. So the previous consultation that we ran was about 7,000, but we still think that this response rate is a reasonable response rate. To put it into context, I know the airport consultation received 10,000 responses, but on the flip side of that, the city centre survey also received about 1,500. So we do feel that it's quite a reasonable response rate. We applied the same principles as we've done previously. Information about the consultation goes on the website. It's shared on social media. We have information in the one-stop shop downstairs, so the contact centre are also encouraging residents to fill in the surveys when they come as well. We'd be open to any suggestions, so if members have got any other ways that we can communicate the consultations out, considering obviously the council have adopted a digital strategy as well. Thank you.
Thank you. No supplementaries on that one. Question 2, Councillor Samet.
Hi, you're right. In terms of receiving a good representation across demographics, how could this be improved, certainly across age and gender?
So again, we've compared the results that we got this time with the previous consultation we did in 2024, and the results were very similar for the age profile and the gender profile. In fact, from looking at young people, there's still a lot of young people under the age of 34 that actually still live with parents. So we kind of have to presume a little bit, that maybe it's parents putting bins out. They're the ones that are more impacted by the changes that are coming rather than the younger age range. But yeah, they're very similar demographics. And considering this was a digital survey, I'm really impressed with the amount of the older generation that actually responded to the survey as well. So we feel that was quite successful. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. No supplementary.
Communication. How will communication be improved given that 43.8% were unaware of the options to pay for an extra green bin? And what is the cost of this extra green bin, please?
So the cost of the extra green bin, they're all on the website, but currently, prior to the increase in fees and charges, the first additional bin is £46 and the subsequent bin after that, so 3 bins or more, are £34.50, and that runs from March to the end of November. Out of the 43% that you referenced not knowing about the supplementary green bin, only 5% of those were actually interested in having one. So since the consultation responses have been received, we have spoken to comms, our communications team, about producing a better plan this year. So the green bins recommence within 2 weeks, and our communications team are just working up a plan now. Again, it's a digital plan on trying to push that additional green bin service that we do offer. The take-up is quite well, to be fair. You'll tend to find that people don't just have one additional bin, they'll have 3 or 4 rather than just one additional bin. So we're working on that strategy at the moment, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. No supplementaries? Ah, okay.
Thank you, Chair. The price for the extra green bin, is it per month, per year, one-time fee?
It runs from the March to the November, so it's a one-time fee for that period of 9 months. Okay.
And question 4, over to Councillor Linley.
Has the public been sufficiently briefed and informed about how the next waste and recycling collection contract will actually work and how the savings will be made? I'm just thinking now that you've got if I can just expand a little bit, you've got a mixed collection twice a month. Now you're looking at a separated collection once a month per different load, if you like. So you've got an A and B mix. Now it's going to an A 1 week and then B a fortnight on. Do you think that the uptake of that from the residents is going to be sufficient to maximise the savings? Because we're obviously aware that any contaminants or overfills per bin, that bin will likely be left and collected by street scene, which is going to attract another cost. So what are your thoughts on that, and have you taken any steps to sort of prevent that sort of that situation happening?
But the whole reason for running the consultation was so we could try and inform public, you know, of the changes that we're trying to make. We also, the consultation that we did a couple of years ago also touched on this, so that information's been out in the public domain for a couple of years. These are statutory changes as well that we're having to make, as Kelly alluded to earlier, so we're going to have to make these changes. In relation to savings per se, to roll out another fortnightly collection of, say for example, you know, paper and card bin, and then what we call mixed recycling. So if we didn't go to that once every 4 weeks collection, we would have to double up on all of the collection vehicles that we've got, and also obviously the staffing costs, which would be quite a significant additional cost to the council. So hence the reason why a lot of authorities are going to a once a 4 weekly collection for the recycling, obviously on alternate fortnights, so that, as you've said, you know, 1 week you get your paper and card bin, and then a fortnight's time you get your other recycling bin, and so forth all the way through. By separating out paper and card, we actually make savings. At the moment, it all goes to a materials recycling facility, so we have a gate fee for all of those materials. Because it's combined with cans, which have got, obviously some have got liquid in, obviously the pot stubs and trays sometimes not 100% clean. The cardboard and the paper does get slightly contaminated with the materials from the dry recycling. So by keeping that material clean, and they're going to a separate materials recycling facility where they just recycle paper and cardboard, the council can make significant savings, because the gate fee that we pay, so the money that we pay per tonne to go over the weighbridge per se, will be much lower than what we pay now, which is where the savings come in from. There was another point to your question, wasn't there? Sorry, I've lost.
Was it about how we kind of...
it was
I
like
think
the
education,
education, yeah.
Yeah.
So as part of the team, we would always, on rollout of a service, we always go with a 3-phase approach. So it's 3 lots of communications, that's standard practice. So every resident will get like a pre, a during and a delivery, as been on delivery. So they will get 3 sets of information that come out, so that they know what's coming, what's expected. We drip feed that information directly to the householder. We would also then do a huge communications campaign through social medias, newsletters, websites, etc. as well. We're getting in. We've got a plan to get into the community libraries as well, into the communities, into the hubs that they've got, just to try and make sure that residents know about the changes and they're supported with the changes. In relation to the contamination question, again, we're hoping to expand the team so that we can actually be more visible out and about and deal with contamination. So actually speaking to residents, actually feet on the ground is what we need when it comes to contamination, and a much more, softly approach, rather, carrot rather than stick approach in trying to encourage people to recycle. It's very difficult, to find people for recycling. It's not, it's very difficult to issue, fixed penalty notices. It's not really what the council want to do at the end of the day, because we want to be encouraging residents of the borough to be recycling as much as they can, and where we can encourage that and support that, we will. And that's kind of in the longer term plan over the year, is to make sure that we've got that education and communications plan in place to minimise contamination, but also to make sure that residents are putting the right things in the right bins.
Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Sorry, but I just wonder if you could restate what you was on about with the not needing to purchase extra vehicles, because I'm just thinking that to my mind, a set tonnage for an area, whether it's picked up as a mix or two separate entities, is still the same tonnage. So I'm just wondering where the requirement for extra vehicles is coming from.
Yep. So if we went for an alternate fortnightly collection, then we wouldn't need any extra vehicles because, like you say, the tonnage is the tonnage. But if we did fortnightly collections for the recycling of the two different bins, then we would need extra vehicles, because despite the tonnage, the vehicles would still have to drive around that area to collect. So we might not need as many, but we would still need extra vehicles. Yeah. Okay. No problem.
Councillor Whiting would like to jump in.
If I just wanted to come in terms of Councillor Linley's point about cost saving. As you know, we will shortly be going out to procurement for a new contractor. And again, I suppose with inflation and the cost of new vehicles, fuel, overhead costs around minimum wage, staff costs, they've all increased significantly. So I would suspect it's unlikely that we will make any saving on this new contract. I think we will see an inflated cost. So again, just in terms of being able to minimise our disposal costs, that's a bit of expense that we can potentially influence by getting people to recycle more and not having the levels of contamination that unfortunately we've had over the last few years. But in terms of those kind of overhead costs for the service and the future contract, I would be very surprised. I'd be absolutely delighted if it came in at a lower price, but I can't see it happening.
Glyn would like to move in with one.
Chair, do you think it might increase, because most people I speak to, they just say, well, this sorting bins out is getting a bit complicated for them. Do you think it might increase fly tipping?
It's difficult to say. I think there's an assumption that you change the bins and you make it more difficult for people, and people just not comply and throw it over the back fence. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think you get people. It's a mindset being a fly tipper, isn't it? At the end of the day, some people might put things in the wrong bin inadvertently, and some people might not care and just sling something that could be recycling in the residual. But I think actively going out and fly tipping, I mean, that's a criminal offence. So I think you have to have a particular mindset to go breaking the law. So I mean, I personally, I mean, as you know, fly tipping's a huge problem in Doncaster. It's a huge problem nationally. It's not just residents, though, that are the perpetrators of fly tipping. It's not necessarily domestic waste that we get fly tipped, although we do get that fly tipped. Although the bigger fly tips tend to be stereotyping, your man in a white van that'll take something, having advertised on Facebook for 20 quid and then he'll, tip it in Hexthorpe, for example. Sorry. So I think it's something that people, I think it's something that the general public think, well, if you change things and you make it more difficult, people will just fly tip. I don't know that they will necessarily. And also, I think if we boil this down, that there'll be an additional bin that people will have to use, but there will be an opportunity to recycle more. And how hard is it to put a piece of cardboard in one bin and a plastic pot in another and dirty nappies in another? It's not a big ask. We're not asking people to, anybody can do it, kids can do it. It's not hard. I think it's really just, again, part of our education is, changing people's mindset. I mean, if you go to somewhere like Germany, it is just in their psyche. This is, why would you drop litter on the floor? We just don't do it. You put it in the bin. Why wouldn't you recycle? And I think we need to kind of make it socially unacceptable for people not to recycle properly. At the end of the day, it's protecting the environment. It's saving money. There's nothing bad. There's nothing bad that comes out of recycling.
Do you think, is there out in schools about it?
Yeah, Lee has a team.
Start with kids.
Sorry. Yeah, Lee has a team that we go out and we do some outreach into schools to get in early and teach kids to recycle. I mean, you know, the younger generation seem to be much more interested in the environment per se than the older generation. So I think which is brilliant, and I think we're pushing an open door there. But again, I would probably say, you know, in years gone by, council budgets were a lot healthier in order to do that kind of outreach and early education work in primary schools in particular, and budgets have reduced significantly, as you all know, and generally it's those sorts of engagement activities that have seen some significant cuts.
Lee would like to follow up.
Hi, you're right. I'll be honest with you, at the beginning I was a bit sceptical about another bin. But now you've explained it regarding, the contaminants and paper. I get it. In regards to communication engagement, can I suggest that you contact the ward councillor of each area, so it makes communication that to our residents a little bit better. Yes.
Yeah, if I can just, I mean, you absolutely, you've hit the nail on the head, and it's something I was going to raise. You all have such good reach into your own wards, particularly through your social media pages. Every community has their own Facebook page, don't they? Now, sometimes when you do put things on about the bins, it can open the floodgates for yourselves potentially, but certainly I think as part of our comms plan, what we'll do is get some Facebook kind of images and messages that we can share with members, so that you can start putting that information through your own social media pages. And again, it would be really beneficial for us to get any feedback that you get, negative or positive, from those sorts of posts that you put up. So we'll make sure we'll take that away as an action. So thank you for that, Councillor Sammut.
Iono, I think you have a follow-up now.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I wanted to ask a few questions in regards to enforcement, because you've mentioned that. But just to continue on that idea of communicating to constituents through the ward members, I would suggest not using PDFs as an informative tool for the councillors, because you cannot share that as a useful piece of information onto social media. You always have to snapshot it, and the resolution and the quality of that information is going to be lower. So I would suggest a JPEG or something of that sort, a type of poster that can be sent to the councillor, so then we can propagate it as such, because I'd rather not have to change the information on those information materials, or to have to recompile them. But on the enforcement side of things, do we have an enforcement unit in terms of doing something about the contaminants in let's say a recycle bin, in a blue bin? And when it comes to the enforcement, what is the enforcement procedure if we have one, and what's the cost to our enforcement efforts, please? Thank you.
I'll come in first and I'll bring you in. So we had, as residents, you'll probably remember this, it would be about 2 years ago now, we had a really proactive, what we called a tagging campaign. So bins that were contaminated were tagged, and they were left and they weren't emptied. We had some mixed experiences. It was a really useful exercise, actually. So initially we piloted this approach in Rossington, and we did lots of advanced communications with residents, and we had really good compliance. Actually, it really encouraged people to recycle properly, and our contamination levels dropped significantly. We then looked to roll that out a few months later in other parts of the borough, but we didn't do the same intensive communication campaign that we'd done in Rossington, and to put it mildly, all hell broke loose. So people were really, really unhappy. Interestingly, the sorts of complaints and communications we got were not from the people that were contaminating the bins. Quite the opposite. They were kind of a bit shamefaced and didn't get in touch. It was from people who were, shall we say, aspirational recyclers. So they'd be, at this point in time, we weren't recycling yoghurt pots and plastic tubs, And it was those people that were thinking, well, it says on this tub and bit of plastic that I can recycle it, so it's going in my blue bin. So it was these people who were really keen to recycle and were doing the right thing, but unfortunately at that point, our recycling facility couldn't take those pots and trays. So that's where we got the main kickback from. So we had a quite hairy time, didn't we? The mayor was over, you know, had numerous complaints. We were dealing with a lot of them as well. But as I say, not from the people doing the offending, the people that were trying to do the right thing. But unfortunately, we didn't have that facility. Kind of fast forward, we introduced the ability for people to put the pots, tubs and trays in the blue bin this time last year. So, you know, so again, tick that box. The campaign work that we did, so after we'd kind of had quite a lot of kickback, we then did, for the next phase, we repeated the communications to all households, and I don't think we got many, if any at all, complaints. So what we learnt from that lesson was communication is absolutely key to getting messages out, and people are quite happy to comply if you remind them. I think the thing is that with waste management, you need to keep repeating the same thing over and over again, because some people do fall back into bad habits and, you know, start putting things in the wrong bin. So I think it's, you know, we need to have this kind of consistent engagement education campaign. Your second point about enforcement, it is quite difficult. So probably about 10-15 years ago, I think there was that councils could issue fines for people that were contaminating bins. Again, that was really unpopular with the public, and so the government rode back from that position. So now we have to send a number of advanced warning letters to householders, and because it's an offence, we obviously need to be directing those letters to an individual, and then any enforcement or subsequent fine would have to be addressed to an individual. It's really hard to prove who's contaminated a bin, because if you knock on a door and say, well, it wasn't me, you know, you could have a household with 6 people, you could have a household with 2. So it's quite difficult to pin people down, to pin the perpetrator down. The other thing is as well is, you know, plausibly, well, my bin wasn't contaminated. It's been somebody from up the road's been and thrown in, you know, some dirty nappies again, for example, in the blue bin there, you know, so it's quite difficult to prove. We do have an enforcement team, as you know, but we tend to focus on kind of the fly tip material rather than contamination in bins. Contamination in bins is something that we work with Suez on, who are our contractor. So I think that, have I answered all of your questions there, Councillor Crakian? Is there anything you wanted to come in?
I'd say yes. If you could also touch on the proportion of contaminated waste, as in how much of the waste that we're recycling is actually contaminated, because that will reveal if there is an actual issue there or not. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we do have, so by law now, every load that we send to a materials recycling facility has to be sampled for the content. So we do get that information back, and that's how we kind of manage what our contamination rates are. We have a threshold of about 10% with our contractors. At the moment, it's just above that. It's about 17. So gradually, it's crept up and up and up. As Kelly referenced earlier, you know, it's one of those things where we need to keep the communication flowing, which we've not done recently. But what we're doing to try and eradicate that now is we have a 3-stage approach in relation to contamination. So tagging is the first one. So we monitor and record where the tags are issued to individual properties. We've actually just redesigned that so it's yellow, because they were blue. We thought, they're not really standing out very well on these bins, so we've actually redesigned that now so it's yellow, so it really stands out. The second occasion of any contamination that's recorded at a property within a specific period, might be talking about 6 or 8 weeks, a letter is then generated that's sent out to the resident, and then following that, if there's a further repeat contamination, then we do visits. We do actually do visits and try and speak to residents. So there is that 3-stage approach. We don't just leave things. But on the flip side, we've also got finite resource. You know, we can't go and see everybody. So we do try and stick to areas at a time. So Yeah.
So that would be between 10 and 20% in terms of contaminants, more or less, depending on the time. Lovely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, obviously a very provoking question, but I want to let things go. But I have a hand up from Nick and a hand up from Russ, and then I want to move on to Nick's own question 5. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I jumped the gun a bit there, but just going back to what you said, obviously there's this deposit return scheme proposal, and I mean borough-wide, obviously, if you sort of introduce a deposit return scheme and it creates a sort of incentive, and people might, well, if they maybe find cans or go out the way, like you say, use pocket money doing that, and it is a sort of cherished ideal that, you know, you'll see people maybe deliberately picking up the odd tin can and then maybe kids getting pocket money from it. But over time, obviously, in the blue bins out there across the borough, there must be a reduction in the amount of tins and cans and plastic bottles actually going into those blue bins. I don't think a deposit return scheme would render them obsolete. I think it's good, obviously, but over time, you might well find that you're dealing with a much smaller quantity of, you know, bottles and that sort of thing, because people have naturally thought, well, I'll get 10p back if I take it back, so they won't use the blue bin for that anymore. And do you think that's a significant thing, or is it, you know, have you planned that or thought about it in some way, or how have you approached it?
Yeah, so thank you. So the deposit return scheme, or the implementation of it, is one of the reasons why we were looking at like a 4-weekly collection of the recycling, because eventually we know that the materials within that bin will decrease over time. So the implementation of the deposit return scheme initially is to prevent litter and to increase the quality of recycling. That's why the 2 reasons why it's been implemented. But obviously what we're talking about there, as Kelly alluded to earlier, we're talking about tin cans, they're steel and aluminium. We're talking about plastic bottles that are PET plastic, which is high grade quality materials. These materials are the materials that we get money back from through our materials recycling facilities. We have a 50-50 take back on an income share. So again, that income will start to decrease once the implementation of the deposit return scheme. But yeah, that was one of the drivers why we wanted the 4-weekly collection of the recycling, because we know that over time the materials in what's in the blue bin now, obviously taking out the paper and card, will decrease over time.
No, thank you. That's very good, because I'm quite optimistic about it. I think I could well see it reducing litter, certainly. And the problem is, you see, it's like a lot of things. There's always be unintended consequences. If you send, like, say, I don't know, a little child goes out thinking they're doing the right thing. I used to collect the newspapers at school and take them to the cuts bin. Right, that was one of my jobs. So you've got some kid goes out litter picking, inadvertently, you know, maybe picks up some contaminant themselves because they're litter picking. You could see all sorts of unforeseen consequences, but I think it would reduce the amount of litter, certainly. I would hope so. It would have a noticeable impact, and clearly we'll see it around. It's just my fear is, obviously, if, like, you see some, I know litter picking in my ward and stuff, sometimes you find wherever we go in, say, certain parts of Cantley, you always find the same things, mattresses or all sorts of stuff. But someone picks up, say, a PET plastic bottle of Coke that's been there 6 months and it's full of mud, and they rock up to the deposit return scheme. You're not going to be able to take it, are they? And that sort of stuff. But I'm quite optimistic about it. I think you've planned it well, and that's the thing. It's just a shame, I feel, that you know, it's been talked about by government, certainly when the Conservatives were in, and now Labour. It will come to pass. It's going to happen, but it's just, we could have had it years ago, couldn't we? You know.
Thank you. Russ, please close out this question.
Yeah, I think we all can agree that contaminants in any sort of recycling bin is going to be, it's a hurdle that's got to be overcome somehow. So I'm just wondering about the inequality of the number of general waste bins that you go from house to house to house, where you've got a household with 2 or 3 people in it. Next door you'll have a household with 6 or 7 people in it, HMOs, you know, where you've got a higher occupancy level, they're obviously going to be generating their own waste at whatever level, and they'll all be vying for space in the bins. So I can see there's going to be lots of overfills, overspills, and it could lead to, well, I think they're doing the right thing by putting it in a bin anyway. Misplaced, altruism, I guess. But is there any potential for increasing the number of general waste bins throughout those places that would need them, like HMOs or places with higher occupancy levels?
So we already have that policy in place whereby any households where there's 6 or more in the family, or where there's children still in nappies, potentially under the age of 3.5, any residents that because obviously there's a lot more care in the community now, so where residents need extra support with any hygiene waste, we've got a policy in place for that as well. And for the high mows that you've talked about, we have a policy in place, so they do get an additional residual bin, but they also get extra recycling bins as well, to encourage them to recycle, not just to put in there. So we do have a policy whereby any additional capacity within the household do get additional resource at the curbside as well. It's in place now, yeah.
Okay, I hope that met all the supplementary rules. Probably one of the longest questions we've had. Over to you, Nick, please, for your own question 5.
Thank you. Right. Annual collection calendars. What feedback have you received regarding the receipt and use of timetables? Will the use of calendars continue to be used, or are there plans to make them digital? How can residents receive any updates? They should set an automatic high standard in the maximisation of collection and recycling.
Thank you. So with the feedback that we've got from residents on the consultation, it's clear that the residents love the calendars that we send out every year. And from our perspective, it's a great opportunity, again, to reinforce the recycling message. In fact, I actually see the calendar now as more of an information leaflet with dates attached than actually a calendar that we send out, because there's that much information in it now. So we're planning to continue that because, again, through the last of the consultation, it's very well received. People do keep it. The actual digitalisation, we already have the information available on the website. So if somebody did lose their hard copy calendar, they can go onto the website and put their address in. It will bring the collection schedules up for each month for obviously the different containers that are at their property. So moving forward, we would be advocating that we keep the calendar, especially if we're going to move to a full weekly collection for the recycling, just so that it's just an extra reminder for residents. And it's that ease of communications, isn't it? We need to make things simple and easy. And if you're sending it out directly to them, then they've all received that information.
Now, I was just going to say thank you. My mum's a very enthusiastic recycler, and I know the recent change regarding the, like putting yoghurt pots in and stuff is long overdue. I know some boroughs have done that and established it quite differently and things, but no, it was very welcome, and it's actually, it used to take us about, say, 6 weeks to even half fill the blue bin, because one of the things we don't do is consuming. That's where you want to get people, is actually consuming so much in the first place. That's how you'd reduce a lot of the thing. But it took us about, say, 6 weeks. Now, because of the change, I think it's about 3 weeks, because so many different plastic wrap, all that sort of stuff all went in the black bin, obviously, because we couldn't recycle it. I know she would rely on the calendar. She's got it stuck on the fridge with a magnet, because she doesn't really do computers, so a digital one. I think you could, like you say, you mentioned the term enthusiastic recyclers. I imagine a lot as a cohort of people across the borough. There might well be all sorts of different people, but I imagine, say, some of them might well not have digital, might not be able to access it on the phones and that, so it's probably very good that you keep posting it out, particularly with the dates for when the changeover happens and stuff. Yeah, thank you.
Just to add to that, I think our elders within the borough, as you say, are some of our most enthusiastic recyclers and keep everybody else right on their road in terms of which bin goes out on which day, so that, you know, they're worth the weight in gold.
Supplementary from Glyn, please.
I haven't actually seen this leaflet that you're on about, but I'm sure our lass knows exactly where it is. Is there anything on it that gives people the ability to report fly tipping? Is there a number on there?
On the calendar, we don't tend to put the number on. We tend to put website links on. So there isn't anything about fly tipping on there because it is a service information for waste and recycling. So it's literally, it covers everything that we do. So it includes information about house or waste recycling centres, bulky waste collections. It even goes into a bit of detail about what happens to your waste, as Kelly alluded to earlier. It doesn't go to landfill. On the back of the calendar this year, we put the promotion of the collection of the batteries and the vapes on the back. You know, so it is literally a service information leaflet for waste and recycling.
Yeah, can I ask, is there any, is there anything you can do like with McDonald's, Kentucky, any other place that has a drive-through? Can we try to get them to print the registration of the car on the bag? You know what I mean?
I've heard this mentioned before, actually.
Probably.
Again, it would be about compliance with big
but we can
big
ask,
brands.
you know.
Yeah.
Do you really want to help people because it's your product, innit? It's on it. All right. You know, if you play the card well, you're contributing to recycling. If you put somebody's number plate on a bag that's been through a drive-through,
it makes sense, but I think it would need to be a national approach because obviously those big names are all franchised anyway. They all run off the same digital systems in the shop, so it's not necessarily something that we would be able to negotiate with individual franchisees locally. It would be with, you know, the main kind of KFC's head office, McDonald's head office, and I think it would be something that government would need to spearhead rather than us locally.
it might only take a black felt pen to write it on bottom. You know what I mean? Anyway, okay, Tam.
Further follow-up from Nick, please.
So, yeah, it's just what Glyn said. Basically, where local authorities have had sort of similar success with that, it's come about via planning or selective licensing, and that particularly, as you mentioned, drive-throughs, where they have a new application for a drive-through, not one in situ, but a new application. Maybe planning can then add conditions.
Link to a camera.
Yeah,
picks it up.
and that's then becomes a, because it's been talked about before, and I know, say, like you see it in the certain US states and stuff, so you can help identify. And then what's happened is, previously, I think there was a trial of it in this country. Someone turned around and made a case regarding GDPR and how it's, and all that sort of thing, and, you know, who's liable and all that. Because I think there's some regulations regarding cameras anyway. But I know it is certainly something where you've had, like, say, drive-throughs particularly, which are notorious for the source. There's a few in my ward around Hurton, well, they're not actually in my Hurton Triangle Way and stuff, and that sort of thing. I can't accuse anyone particularly, but they do, as a concept, the drive-through is a problematic thing for the environment, isn't it, really? I mean, it's, you know, really the question should be, should we ban drive-throughs full stop? But anyway, I'm not going to ask that question. But you know where my views are. But it is a good idea, but it's just that it could come about because of planning law. Sorry, anyway.
Question 6, please, Russ.
Well, thank you, but I think Councillor Annan has put this one to bed, really. The question is, what lessons have been learned regarding the communication of newly accepted materials, pots, tubs, trays and cartons? I would think that most people get the card for the collection days. That's the most important thing to them. But to be honest, I've actually found myself using the card for my own purpose for batteries. And I actually caught the guys just in time. So that was very useful. Getting rid of all the packaging, putting it in a clear plastic bag on top of the blue bin, and the system worked. So I think really, as long as we can keep communication flowing and getting people to engage with the information that's on those cards, the system's got a good chance of working. So, yeah, thank you very much.
So just to come back on that, thank you. We've learned that putting the information on the back of the calendar when it comes out. So when we sent out the calendar last year, we put literally the batteries and the vapes on that back page. You'd got your address page and then the batteries and the vapes on the other side. That works brilliantly. So we've learned that actually any key messages that we need to get out specifically to the members of the public, we should put on the back page of the calendar when it goes out. It just seemed to be really timely that we could implement that when the calendar was going out. And I think we had, so just to put it into context, when the calendars went out, we had one social media post that went out around about batteries and vapes, and in the first fortnight of those collections, so basically obviously it's fortnightly collection, so with first collections, in those 2 weeks we collected over a ton of batteries. So that's like 1,000 kilograms, which is a massive amount of batteries. We weren't expecting to collect that many, and to date now we've collected about 4 tons to date. So I don't know where all these batteries, people have obviously been saving them up, so they know that they shouldn't be in the bin, you know, so they've saved them up and we're still getting them through. So yeah.
Just a thought with that, actually, is there no sort of potential for perhaps a bit of positive feedback for the residents who actually do the right thing? Because I just feel that we're living in a sort of a penalty system, and there's no thank you or well done, you know, even if it's just something as silly as a thank you sticker for doing the right thing, you know, to give them that feedback that it is noticed and it is appreciated.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. I know that in the calendar is a very positive. There's not, you know, we don't go into loads of detail about contamination. It's very positive, but yeah, we can definitely look at that.
As an idea, because we were mentioning the collection calendars being on fridges and whatnot, you can literally send a fridge magnet with it to say good job, thank you for last year's well done collection and whatnot.
A bronze sticker.
There you go, or a golden one.
Can I just come in with one here? Fly tipping been mentioned a lot by Kelly and Glyn. If anybody's watching this internally with a ward hat on, we've made great progress in Mexborough. Contact me direct and I will update you on what we've done. Okay. So one from myself now. How will the council increase safe use of curbside battery recycling? What is the cost of this recycling? And a suggestion, could the green bin, which is already on doing the rounds, be split in half for glass and half for these batteries?
So we think the battery collections as they are at the moment are working really well. We've not had any feedback from residents to say that there's been any issues. And obviously the whole purpose of the separating out the batteries is to make sure that we collect them safely so that they're not going into the back of the collection vehicles. It's when obviously you compress the waste, that's when you get your fires, and also when it goes back to the transfer stations and through the reprocessing facilities. So we actually think it is a safe method of collection that we offer now. In relation to separating out putting a different compartment in the green box, the box, if you've ever seen the collection crews empty, they literally pick it up and tip it into another bin that then goes into the back of the wagon. It'd be really difficult to put a compartment in because that compartment would also fall out as the box was tipped upside down. So at the moment, we don't feel like we need to change that collection methodology for the batteries just because it's working really well. In relation to cost, batteries are actually a producer take back. So in relation to disposal of the batteries, we have a producer compliance scheme that comes and collects the batteries at no cost to the council. So that also goes, you know, we don't have to recycle the batteries at curbside. Obviously, we've done it because we don't want fires in the collection vehicles or at the transfer stations. But you can also take them to household waste recycling centres if you want. But any shop that sells batteries should also take them back as well, hence the take back. So the implementation of that battery collection has not actually cost the authority anything. That we use a compartment that's already on the vehicle to store the batteries while they're in transit. Obviously, they get the producer compliance scheme has provided the I can't remember, there's a technical term for the tubs that they're in at the transfer station, has provided those as well. And obviously then they do come and collect and transport them away. So the cost to the council has been nil by implementing that service. And it's had a brilliant impact as well. So
There is, you will agree, a lot to take in. Could you just refresh me on what the current recycling is for batteries, how it's done? Thank you.
So it's collected from the waste transfer station. It actually goes up to a processing facility at Huddersfield. That's where it goes. And there obviously they break the batteries down into the component parts because obviously they're all metals. So obviously under the correct conditions, they basically take the batteries apart and recycle the different component parts.
Thank you. Supplementary from Ionu. Go on.
Thank you. When it comes to the safety hazards that comes with this, because we're talking different types of batteries, the lithium ones I'm referring to, are those being collected and safely disposed of? Because they can very easily catch fire if exposed to water and so on.
Yeah, we've included lithium batteries in the collection that we offer.
Sorry, my mum takes batteries to the supermarkets, and the thing I was going to say, I've always thought, are they a health hazard? Those they're just plastic, cylindrical, see-through, and you just pop them in, and then like you're walking past. Are they safe in a public place though to have them like that? Does the council have any oversight over that, or is it just arranged entirely with the supermarket? Yeah, because I'm just interested. It's like you said, when the health risk occurs when they're compressed or moved or inadvertently. But I can see there's massive health risks associated with this because effectively you're concentrating quite toxic chemicals potentially all in one place, aren't you? And that's mitigating, that's difficult, isn't it? Yeah.
Is that your sub complete, Nick?
Chair, I would assume that all of that would be risk assessed by the supermarkets themselves, and obviously the producers, manufacturers that come and collect them back, because yeah, obviously they wouldn't want any kind of health risk in a supermarket or anywhere, any other public place. Yeah, I'm sure that's been done.
Thank you. Question 8, please, Lee.
It's actually already been asked by Councillor Russ, but it's all right. I'll let you do it.
That's an apology. I think I've jumped the gun on that question there, but so appreciate that. But for question 9, what plans are in place for monitoring and control, i.e. enforcement, to prevent potentially 2 separate recycling bins with overfills or contaminants? I guess it's a matter of quantities and how much is going to be collected throughout the month. I just feel that, you know, there's potential there for 2 lots of overfills being well made available, if you like, to the collection.
Thank you. So I think we've touched on this a little bit through the previous question. So going back to the 3-phased approach when rolling out the service, obviously residents getting 3 lots of information. We will also, we've talked about, didn't we, and obviously putting information out through ward members, making sure we've got the, you know, all of the other comms, website, newsletters, social media posts, just to try and make sure that our residents are all clear on what they need to do. But obviously we go into schools as well, so we'll be going into making sure that we know we've got information packs going out. But again, it's coming back to then the other side, isn't it? If things are not going right, we've got the tagging, we've got the letters, we've got the visits. You know, so we do have a number, door knocking, etc. So we do have a number of systems in place that we do now that we can just replicate for the rollout of the new container when it happens. Okay.
I think it all comes back to just making sure that there's enough bin capacity to take all the expected quantities, I reckon. So, yeah.
Supplementary from Iona.
Actually, as an additional question, if possible, please. Lovely, thank you. In regards to where are we going to put that extra bin? Because that's a bit of a problem, and I'm talking specifically around Priestley Close and Springwell Lane in Bowlby. There are council buildings that are split into 2 to 4 apartments with no allocated bin space. It looks bad, it smells bad. It's especially in summer and so on. Usually they're arranged around either the front or the back entrance of the building, not always in the cleanest way, and so on. There's no specific, as you've said, it's kind of hard to pinpoint who exactly is going to contaminate those bins and who exactly is misusing them and so on, as you have 2 to 4 apartments per building. But they're regular bins. They're not bigger, they're not smaller, and they're just exposed and there in the weather. So has anything been done to kind of mitigate those circumstances?
I'll come in first. We would obviously work with yourselves where there would be problematic addresses. I mean, inevitably, you know, some properties, some residents will struggle with space, and we'll take them on a case-by-case basis and look at what the solutions are. But again, once we do move forward with the changes, working with yourselves will be critical, because, you know, you'll probably be first port of call for a lot of complaints, and we'll work with you. But again, in advance of that, if you're aware of specific areas where you know there'll be problems, please feed that through to us, and we'll bear that in mind and kind of be, you know, quick out of the traps to look at those particular areas.
I actually already have.
Right.
At the point where we had only 3 bins, now we're going to have 4. It's literally going to be a lineup of bins for every building. If I'm looking at the map now, and I'm seeing 2, 4, 6, about 6 buildings. So they have about 6 entrances times 4 bins. So we're looking 24 bins all lined up around there in not the best way. And as I addressed it, I think St. Ledger's managing it. They were saying there's not much to be done with it. It's just going to carry on like this. So not only that is not being addressed, it's going to be even more bins added to the problem. So I think some communication between you guys and St. Ledger should happen to kind of do something about that.
So we already work really closely with St. Ledger. So again, once we're just waiting for budget approval. So once those have been done, we can then start putting a plan or implementing the plan that we've got. But, you know, for the type of buildings that you're talking about, we can look at smaller bins on a more frequent collection basis, or we can look at communal bins. Whichever solution will fit that kind of area. So we've got some residents in the borough that still have a sack collection, so they have a weekly sack and boxes emptied because we physically can't put wheeled bins in. So there are a number, if you're not aware of them, there are a number of other collection methodologies in the borough. It's just the majority of, you know, the citizens are on, you know, a wheeled bin collection. So, but yeah, we do work closely with St. Ledger and all the caretakers. So we'll, but if you've got any addresses, like Kelly said, pass them through. We'd rather deal with them sooner rather than later. So, thank you.
Glyn, please.
Yeah, just going on from what Lone's question was, in that situation you've like got 24 bins. They're not made out of fire retardant material, are they, these bins, in any way? They're just plastic. They'll really go up if they get 24 bins in one place. That's a nice big fire, that. See what we can do about that? I don't know.
Well, if it's a St. Ledger property, for example, you know, we may be able to put a bin compound in that they can manage. So they would, you know, so again, it depends on the location. We'd have to literally go and assess it to see and deal with them on a case-by-case basis.
Right, I think it's been very, very useful. I hope it has been for you as well. To the members, really, any other questions before we move on? No? Okay. So now the discussions have finished, we just formally need to move on to the recommendations. Basically, is the panel happy with how we've conducted today? We are where we should be, and one seconder of that fact. Nick, okay. Are you okay with that over there? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for members have raised some really good points today, and we'll take those away with us. And as I say, if there's anything in your wards that you've got any concerns about, please just feed them through.
So thanks from me again. Just to highlight that we've got another ONS meeting next week, and the agenda will be out as soon as possible. Just like to introduce Caroline again, who will outline the report.
Won't take long, everyone. So it's just a regular item you have on about the work plan and forward plan. You've got a couple of more meetings coming up. So the one next week, which is as your role as a crime and disorder committee, looking at the last year of the I forgot it now, the Safer Doncaster Partnership. So that's next week, and then there'll be one in April. On the domestic abuse strategy. There was a briefing earlier this year, and that'll be the formal meeting to look at the strategy. Just going on to the forward plan, the main items on the plan in the pack are in relation to budget, which obviously been considered by OSMC, and then the finance and performance quarterly report coming in March. So as usual, what I'll say, if you've got any questions or anything to highlight, if you do so through the chair, Councillor John Reid, who is on that committee, and he can take them forward for you. Otherwise, any member can attend any meeting as well. And that's all, Chair.
Thank you once again. If I don't get any shaking of the heads, I will now close this meeting.